Yeah, I will be talking about DSpace administration, which is the most important presentation if you want to be thorough with the DSpace and launching a repository. To get a better idea of DSpace administration, just keep at the back of your mind two aspects. Compare digital library or repository with that of a regular traditional library, and also compare some of its aspects with the journal publishing process. So, if you keep these two concepts in mind, understanding DSpace administration is fairly simple. So, how a digital repository is organized? Here we try to compare DSpace with a regular traditional library, where books are arranged on the shelves by subject, and there will be a catalog to access them. So, here how do we arrange the digital objects in a digital repository? Bit streams, those are the files having content. It could be an image or a video or a text or audio. Then bundles, that means more than one bit stream constitute a digital item or resource. See, in case of thesis, perhaps to transfer the thesis over the network, it is a better idea to split the thesis into various chapters. That means, if the thesis has 10 PDF files, it is better for 10 chapters, 10 PDF files rather than one PDF file for the entire thesis. So, in which case we consider the 10 PDF files of a thesis as a bundle. An item, that is the actual digital document, okay, the resource, which is contained in a collection. So, a collection can be defined as a set of items. So, the collection could be some collection of photographs. So, if you have photographs of say Ranganathan, all of them are kept under a collection called some Ranganathan's photos, and each photo becomes an item along with its metadata about when it was taken and who are the other persons in the photograph, like that you can describe. Then the sub communities and communities, both are similar. In an academic libraries, you can have communities under which there could be sub communities, something similar to some social sciences. A sub community would be economics or political science, like that. So, communities and sub communities are not exactly different, except subject and a part of a subject. So, in down the some of the slides, I will be repeating some of the concepts, so that I explain each concept from a different angle, but again you may find it repetitive. This is only just to make sure that you are thorough with the basic terminology, so that in future when you build a digital repository, you are clear in your mind. So, the basic digital document is called an item, which is already a repetition. A bundle may consist of many files, bit streams in DSpace parlance. Item is can have one bit stream or a bundle of bit streams. That means, sometimes the item can have only one, okay, but sometimes in case of thesis or something like that, it may have many PDF files. Then item requires metadata description just as printed document. So, in case of printed documents, we have catalog record. In case of digital item, we require a metadata description. Bit streams do not have metadata, in the sense that in a thesis is divided into some 12 PDF files. Each PDF file may not have metadata describing what each one of the chapters, the description about each chapter, but we may have description about the entire thesis. That means, entire bundle will have one metadata rather than each of the bit streams having different metadata. Then bitstream formats, of course, when we were dealing with digitization, we have dealt with bitstream formats. The bitstreams as a digital repository can be a multimedia repository. The files can be text files, it could be a plain text file or a HTML file or PDF, Word, PostScript file or a TeX file. Okay. And the images can be GIF, JPEG, TIFF, etc. Okay, PNG, there are many image formats. Then audio files could be WAV, MP3, Real Audio, MIDI. Then video files could be MPEG, AVI, MOV, etc. So, bit streams can be in any of these formats, and more than that, of course, there are many formats dealing with bit streams of various kinds. In fact, bit streams can be any computer file. Note, the end user system has to have the software to run the bit stream, or his browser has a plugin, one can view or play bit streams. Okay. In the sense that sometimes some of the image files and video files or text files can be viewed from the browser itself. But for some time, for some of the files, probably you may require some other software to be downloaded. Say if it is a flash video, probably your browser you have to download flash plugin to play that. But nowadays with the cloud computing, many of these files without loading the required software can be viewed in the browser in another tab. Just as in the case of when you are using Gmail, if your friend has sent a PDF file, you can open it in Google itself, because not only that, any Excel spreadsheet or a Word file, many things can be opened in that. Otherwise, if it cannot be opened on the browser, you have to download the software that is required to play or view the content of a digital item. In any case, DSpace is blissfully unaware of file formats, it just stores and disseminates them. So, it is the responsibility of the submitter or author to load a file in a meaningful format, a format which everybody knows is a better format rather than some unknown or very rare format. So, ideal bit streams are: use open standards to ensure long term preservation, just as JPEG, MPEG, all these are open standards. So, try to have bit streams in these formats so that long term preservation is possible. Please remember, we cannot preserve the data forever, nothing is permanent in this world. That is why we have to cautiously use the word long term preservation, because we cannot forever preserve anything. So, think of a format which you can support in future, migration across versions of the software, avoid proprietary standards. So, this is the basic, these are the basic rules of the thumb for ideal bit streams. Then DSpace item consists of bit streams, metadata, license, and sometimes a plain text file. For example, if you have uploaded a PDF file, if you want to generate a full text index of that PDF file, provided the PDF file is not images of the pages, but it is converted into text using some OCR or even a born digital document one. Then if you run generate full text indexing, it converts your PDF or Word file into a plain text file and then indexes it. But in case of images, it generates a thumbnail of the image so that it is displayed while browsing. So, any user, he can look at the thumbnail before he actually opens the full image of the file, which may take more time on the network to transmit and display. So, normally the software that is program that is being used for generating full text or thumbnails, it is called Filter Media. But again, user has the option either to generate full text or not. But personally, I prefer Full text is not a very good idea on textbooks or large books, because there are many words which are not directly related to the basic subject of the book. Whereas journal articles and other things which are short in number of pages, probably they are better candidates for full text indexing. Now, items are also referred as digital document, digital resource, digital object, all are same. In DSpace, I think the terminology is used as it is called an item, just as AACR2 uses when you are cataloging an item, which is a highly neutralized word. I think good old days Ranganathan used the word document. Now mostly item is a generic word to include anything. Now, a collection. A collection can be placed, items can be placed in a collection. For example, collection of thesis, collection of reports, collection of how-tos, collection of emails, collection of preprints or postprints or photographs. So many things can be. You can if you can group some a few items under some banner, you can give a common name, which is the collection name of for the group of items. So, collections are part of a community or sub-community. So, you can create collections directly under a community or sub-community. For example, if you have social sciences as a community, you can have common collections under social sciences, under the community social sciences, but say for example sub-community is some kind of anthropology. So, you can have anthropology specific collections under the sub-community, but if you haven't created a sub-community, all the collections can be our collection of anthropology preprints or something like that you can create. Communities can be divided into sub-communities which can be further subdivided. Just as in classification we keep on dividing each subject, here also you can keep on dividing communities and sub-communities and sub-communities like that. So, a few examples of social sciences are social sciences, natural sciences, humanities. So, can be anything intuitive to the end user of the repository. For example, in case of a software industry, probably the communities could be community of developers, community of testers, or community of quality assurance group, or community of administrators, or community of marketing people like that. Only in case of academic libraries, probably we may divide into social sciences, natural sciences, humanities. But basically what exactly the end user intuitively thinks your digital repository should look like, based on his approach, probably you divide your entire collection of digital repositories into various communities and sub-communities and collections. So, again to come back to the examples of sub-communities, under humanities one can have sub-communities like history, philosophy, psychology. Then further subdivision, philosophy can be further subdivided into epistemology, metaphysics and logic. So, it is much like library classification. So, I think probably the people with library science background must have got a hang of how the communities, collections and sub-communities are organized. So, digital library organization depends on your users' expectations rather than anything else. Okay. Under each community or sub-community, you should have collections. Okay. So, it is the collections that contain items, that is the digital documents. Communities or sub-communities cannot have items directly under them. This is very important. So, as an end user or as a submitter or author, if you want to upload a document to a community, you cannot, or to a sub-community, you cannot. Only you can upload your digital item under a collection under the community or sub-community. So, that means you have to archive your publications or digital files to a collection, not to a community or sub-community. So, collections can be organized by type of documents, but again this is only suggesting. Finally, it is you as the administrator who has to decide what kind of collections you want to create under a community or sub-community. For example, the collection could be collection of thesis, collection of articles, collection of photographs or presentations. Then again it depends on users' expectations. So, in case of perhaps an ETD repository, you might have had communities under each subject like physics, chemistry, like that, and collections like thesis or dissertations. Perhaps for undergrad courses, the dissertations, for PhD courses, thesis or something like that. So, it is you as administrator who has to decide what should be the collections under each community. How many you can create? Have any number of communities and sub-communities. Practically there is no limit on the number of communities and sub-communities. Only thing is if you create too many, probably it would be cluttery for the end user. So, you have to think intuitively how to present how to identify the communities, and sub-communities are not mandatory. You can create a sub-community or you need not create a sub-community. From DSpace point of view, there is no difference between community or sub-community. It is only from the standpoint of your organization, you may create sometimes sub-communities or not. For example, in a small digital library, perhaps you may not require any sub-community. You can have any number of collections under a community or sub-community. Again, there is no limit on how many number of collections you should have under each community or sub-community. Then you can have any number of items in a collection. So, each collection can have thousands of items under each collection. Again, there is no limit. Then you can have any number of bit streams in an item. That means when you create a bundle of bit streams, there is no limit on that. In fact, here I would like to point out the old versions of DSpace. For example, if you are uploading chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, they used to appear the last chapter, first chapter 10, 9, 8 like that, but this is corrected in the latter versions of the DSpace. So, an item can be mapped into any number of collections to avoid duplication in case of items belonging to more than one category. Here of course, typically those who try to remember the phase relations of Ranganathan, that means for example, if there is a book on statistics for doctors. So, ideally probably the item should appear both in statistics and in medicine, in which case in digital repository there is no problem, because you can always create a virtual item in the other subjects. Whereas in case of phase relation, you have to identify, take the guidelines from whether it is an influencing subject or influencer subject, all those things come into picture. But again, in case of digital library, as you are creating only virtual items, the physical item is same, but virtually it can be in more than 2 or 3 or 5 collections, and only you give a link to that. That is what is called mapping. So, on the whole, you can create any number of communities, collections, everything. It is only limited by how much your system can support, that is how far you can scale your hardware. Then now you can have only one metadata for an item. As we have already discussed, you cannot have metadata for each of the bit streams in an item, but you can have metadata for the entire item, that is the bundle of bit streams. And you can have only one license to an item. Probably you cannot have license for one single bit stream in a bundle of bit streams in an item. Then one access point to a bundle of bit streams. Sometimes if you load HTML files, okay, say for example a tutorial on Perl programming, and you have 40 HTML files and which are hyperlinked to each other, perhaps you may have to tell the system when a user tries to open which bit stream should be opened first, so that from then onwards he can through hyperlinks move to the other HTML files. That's why you can have only one access point to a bundle of bit streams, especially in case of hypertext HTML files. Then in conclusion, it is the administrator who creates communities and collections, okay, identifies submitters, reviewers, metadata editors, customizes screens, email alerts, authorizations, host of activities. Please remember, administrator has a very crucial role in administering a digital repository. In fact, much of the administrative activities are related to the maintenance of the digital repository. Until now, we covered only how an administrator is responsible in creating communities, sub-communities, collections, and how to identify each item, whether it is going to be supported in future or not. And probably in some of the next presentations, we deal with the people associated with a digital repository like submitters, reviewers and metadata editors. And also there is a big workflow process in the entire digital repository side, that is how the item from the time of submission to the time of being appeared on the digital repository, how it goes through various stages will be covered in the next slides. Right now, to conclude, it is the administrator who makes the digital repository organization much more intuitively presented to the end user. With that, we conclude.